Sup everyone. Now, shonen anime has been here for a long time, and there's always those shows that dominate the anime zeitgeist for a long time. Dragon Ball, The Big Three, Hunter x Hunter, My Hero Academia, Attack on Titan, just to name a few. These shows were insanely popular in their heyday and dominated their eras. And the newest kid on the block, Jujutsu Kaisen, is currently the show that is dominating its era. Everyone and their mom knows about this show, and I thought it would be fun to take a look and see what makes this show tick, as well as my thoughts on the show as a whole. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Now, there's one aspect of the show that is really interesting, and that is, wait for it, it's popular with women. What? I know, sounds crazy, right? But I heard that Jujutsu Kaisen is very popular with women, and especially for a shonen, that is pretty surprising all things considered, because the audience for shonen is predominantly dominated by young men. I mean, it's in the name for crying out loud. Shonen literally means young boys comics / animation. So it is surprising to see that women are taking such an interest in the show. Now, there are a couple of factors that could address this. For one, the women in the show are not your conventional women like in other anime. Usually, women in other anime are kinda useless or much weaker than their male counterparts. Take the Big Three for example. In One Piece, Nami is pretty much useless in a fight, and although Robin is pretty strong, she's definitely not as strong as her male counterparts. Same for Bleach and Naruto. The women in the show are usually just not as strong as their male counterparts. Take Sakura, she's like the template for that. But in Jujutsu Kaisen, it's a different story. Nobara Kugisaki can definitely hold her own, and in her fight with Mahito's clone, she's pretty much on par with him. And when she hits her Black Flash at the end of Season 1, it's pretty sick, I will say, even if she isn't as strong as Itadori or Megumi. And Maki, another female character, can definitely hold her own, especially in Season 3. She is fucking shit up like no tomorrow, and damn what a good episode that was, watching her absolutely destroy everything. Now, there are still the weaker women in the show, but they're usually minor characters, and even then, there are still really strong women side characters. Another small factor, the men in the show are all pretty attractive. I was reading an article about this, and apparently there's something called the female gaze, or something like that the men in the show attract. I mean, I don't know what it is, I don't know what the women want, but something about the men in their outfits really attracts the chicks. I mean, I don't know about the women, but I just want to be like Toji, you feel me? Absolute Giga Chad. Okay, but that's enough about the ladies, am I right? Because it's all about the boys here. And what do the boys want? Action. No, not that kind of action, maybe, but I'm talking about a different kind of action. Fight scenes. And man, do the fight scenes slap. And part of that is the spectacle. Watching Gojo summon a giant purple laser beam out of nowhere to obliterate some type of forest fairy. Watching Geto summon giant dragons and other monsters to attack the enemy. And watching Toji just be an absolute Giga Chad. All of the action is done so well. Part of that is the camera work. The way the camera moves and perspective it shows is really important for a fight scene, and the camera moves so masterfully in the show, it really puts you in the front seat and takes you for a ride. There are so many creative and inspired shots that you just wonder, man, how did they come up with this? And it makes the characters feel like they are whooping ass. The fight scenes are all really well choreographed, both big and small. Watching the fight scenes with Yuji jumping all over the place, jumping through windows, and then flying into the air, punching a giant bird out of the air, and then going to the more close-up and intimate fight scenes, like when Yuji is face-to-face with Chozo, and watching them do hand-to-hand combat, man, the choreography is sick. Part of the fights that makes it really great is also the power system. They get really creative with their powers, and it feels like they can do literally anything they want with cursed energy. It feels so freeform, and sometimes it feels like the author is pulling one out of his ass because it feels so original. Like, there's a power that allows the user to make 24 actions in 1 second, but if they get interrupted, they get stunned. There's also a power that's based on like the stars and something about Orion's belt, and like you can only touch one of them based on like the star order you are in. Like, the powers get really complicated the further down the line you go, and it is really interesting to see how each character uses cursed energy and seeing how each character strategizes around each of their own powers. Like, take Aoi Todo's power for example. His power is the power to switch the places of two objects when he claps, so his entire fighting style is based around that. When he claps, he switches places not only with himself, but he can also switch places with enemies, friends, and he can switch his friends' places with the enemies as well. And sometimes he throws in feint claps, where he switches no one's place, so the enemy is thrown off. And his entire fighting style is built around this mechanic. And that is just one of the powers that exists, and it is one of the simplest powers out there. And there are other applications of cursed energy too, for healing and for regaining cursed energy. Like, for example, the Black Flash, which is a phenomenon in Jujutsu that greatly amplifies the user's physical strike when cursed energy is applied to it within 1/1,000,000th of a second. And if you land a Black Flash twice in a row, you can regain back some of your reversed cursed energy. The power system is honestly similar to Hunter x Hunter, where there are general applications to Nen, and then people build their own style of power based on their talents in mind. The crown jewel of this power system is, of course, the domain expansion. This is one of the sickest powers out there in Shounen, other than maybe Bankai. The user is essentially created a separate isolated space where the user is in full control or gets a buff and their opponent is trapped in that space, forced to fight at a disadvantage the whole time. And the domain expansions are really insane, like Gojo's for example. His domain causes the enemy to be trapped in an infinite void where their mind is filled with an infinite amount of information all at once. And because of that, they are effectively stunned for the duration of that time, in which Gojo can basically do anything he wants to them. And these are by far the craziest of the powers that people have. My favorite one has to be the one that was just introduced in Season 3, with the lawyer Hiromi Higuruma. He forces the enemy into a court where there's a judge-like monster that passes judgment on the enemy, and the enemy is the defendant, while Higuruma is the prosecutor. He then accuses the defendant of a crime and has evidence in a folder that either exonerates them or proves them guilty. And if they are guilty, then Higuruma gets a variety of buffs when the domain is released. It is such a unique concept, unlike anything you will find in other shonen out there. And it is cool to see how the characters will sometimes strategize on how and when to use their abilities. Like when Megumi is fighting Reggie and he purposely lures him to an isolated and enclosed room so that he can fully utilize his domain since it is incomplete. Now, not all the time do they use strategy with their domain expansions. Sometimes they do just throw them out there just because it's so broken, like with Gojo and Sukuna. But even then, the abilities are pretty insane and they go crazy. Now, while the action and power system are immaculate, there's also the plot, which...
I mean, it's alright,
I think there are a lot of different moments where the plot is absolutely goated, and there are other parts where I think the plot sort of stagnates and feels a bit weaker. I would say Season 1 probably has the weakest plot, and that is mostly because it feels more like generic shonen in that part of the show. Like, there's the generic trio of protagonists, the generic school setting, the generic but super hot teacher that is in charge of the team of students. It is very similar to Naruto with Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, and it feels like a staple of shonen anime. There are some slight twists where like Yuji quote-unquote dies, but even then he comes back, it's no big deal. And the characters, the gang is alright. Yuji is your typical uppity and go-lucky main protagonist, Megumi is the slightly edgy and badass of the group, and Nobara is the woman, lol. At least that's how it is in Season 1. There's also your standard school system that gets introduced. Like, it feels like it was kind of tacked on just to have a setting for all the characters to be from. Honestly, in the later seasons, the school basically becomes a non-factor. It's just a place for the students and teachers to be from and have a setting for Season 1 to do stuff in. And while the plot is sort of interesting in Season 1, I feel like the season is mostly used to introduce the setting, power system, and characters. I do think that Sukuna as a villain is pretty interesting. He's like a cursed object inside Yuji, and I do think it is compelling watching the conflict that takes place between the two inside Yuji. Seeing them and their ideals go head to head is unique. I think the plot is the strongest in Season 2 of the show. Like, things really go to a head in that season. The gang gets broken up, fan favorite characters are dying left and right, and everything is really going to shit. Like, it was supposed to be a typical mission for the students, and everything was supposed to work out, up until it doesn't. And this season is my favorite, because everything goes to shit, and it really differentiates the show from other shonen out there. Most shonen take a lot of time to build up, and the characters slowly develop as people, and there are ups and downs, but the gang sticks together for a while and they have a bunch of adventures together. They meet new people, and while the shows are fun, they are usually pretty clean with things and don't usually do anything shocking or out there. They are just plodding around like doopy doopy doo. I am just an old man, no need to worry about me. Season 2? Nah. People are dying left and right. There are insane battles on top of insane battles and the plot goes absolutely haywire. They also just start killing off characters after characters, and they drop what is essentially a nuke on the city, killing a shit ton of people. And the villains really get to shine this season, Mahito especially. You get to see how he thinks, what drives him, and who he is as a character, and Yuji is forced to face the consequences of having Sukuna trapped inside his body. I'm not going to spoil too much, mostly though because it's kind of hard to explain in detail what happens, and it's going to take too much time, but I'm telling you, shit absolutely goes down this season, and it is downright insane what happens. Season 3 is pretty good, not as insane as Season 2, but you still have a bunch of awesome fights. The plot this season though is kind of confusing because of the culling game, more specifically the rules of the culling game. There's like a whole bunch of things about like collecting points, and if you can collect points you can add a rule, and there's a bunch of other rules, and like Kanjaku, another villain, is trying to do something in Japan involving the humans or something. You know what? It doesn't matter. The point is, it is the Hunger Games and Yuji and Megumi are forced to participate. The show this season gets confusing, but there are still a lot of insane fights and spectacle for the watcher, and it is really all I can ask for. Give me some badass fights and I can accept the rest. My favorite part has definitely got to be the Maki fight this season. No spoilers, but batshit insane. And the fight with Reggie is one of the most creative fights that has been shown in shonen anime so far. I feel like the direction is also more creative this season. There are so many shots where you can just tell they were trying to do new things, and it makes this season really interesting. In one episode, it's just a long take of Yuji and a new character just talking for like most of the episode before things go tits up. And that's not the only part. Again, the whole episode with Maki fighting is absolutely insane, and when they meet Higuruma, it is also crazy. There's like light shining down on him and he's just like chilling in a bathtub. Like, bro, who thinks of this stuff? I think one of the best parts has also got to be all the memes that have come from the show. There are so many moments that are just so memeable, and that is part of what makes it memorable. Like the one with Naoya Zenin versus Chozo, where Naoya is just combing through his hair while behind him he's just beating the stuffing out of Chozo. There are so many moments like this, and the show knows exactly how to capitalize on those moments, which has definitely helped to spread the show's popularity. Like, the characters are all constantly aura farming, there's like a million memeable moments. Who doesn't like this shit? While I do think the show has a few problems, as a whole, I think this show is peak shonen, on par with the likes of One Piece and Hunter x Hunter. With such a unique power system, great action, and a great blend of characters, the show is able to stand on its own and push shonen to new heights. I cannot wait for what is to come. And that is going to do it for this video. I would really appreciate a like and subscribe. I work very hard on these videos, and due to some stuff that is happening, I could really use the support. If you can't, no worries, I understand. I appreciate you coming and watching in the first place. I will see you all next time.